Fishes in cooking. We talk about introduction, purchasing, and storing considerations in this particular presentation. Did you know that the word Meenakshi, we're talking about the eyes. So word Meenakshi talks about eyes that resemble a fish. Right, purchasing considerations. Now there are different characteristics that we require to take care of. The odor, which means the smell. The smell has to be fresh and mild. So you're talking about no off odors, no strong odors. It should be a clean smell. Eyes. The eyes require to be clear, shiny and bulging. It should not be cloudy or sunken. The gills should be pink or red, not grey or brown. The texture of the flesh, it should be firm and elastic. It should not have dents easily. It should not get depressed when you press it. The scales should be shiny, tight on the skin. It should not be. Storing considerations. So storing the fresh fish, the objective is to maintain temperature of between -1 to +1 degrees centigrade, to keep the fish moist, to prevent fish odors and flavors from being transferred to other foods. Now that is something we require to be careful about. You don't want, so if it is kept in a deep freezer where you have desserts also, you don't want your chocolate mousse to start smelling of fish. Ideally it should not be kept on the same rack or in the same freezer, but in case it is. To protect the delicate flesh from being bruised. So bruised as in it should not get damaged. The fish has got a very soft flesh. It is softer than everything else. It's softer than poultry, softer than chicken and so on. Sorry, it's softer than meat and so on. So it's a very delicate flesh. You don't want it to get hurt or damaged. It has to be stored properly. Storing method. So how do we? So we store it on crushed ice. Crushed ice is what we use. Crushed ice. So we require to put in a drip pan. A drip pan requires to be used. Drip pan is what? It's a perforated pan on which the ice has been placed and on top of which you have the fish. Advantage of putting a perforated pan is the ice, when it melts, the water will drip into the pan below. So that's a drip pan. Okay. Drip pan to allow for drainage of melted ice. Change ice daily. Cover container or store in separate box away from other foods. Why? You don't want them to get affected with the smell. Whole fish should be drawn. What does drawn mean? Drawn means the intestines required to be removed. It's the same thing, viscera or intestine, right? As soon as possible, because the entrails, they deteriorate. Entrails means intestine, deteriorate quickly. Whole or drawn fish are not wrapped. Cut fish, which is fillets, steaks, portions, should be wrapped or left in moisture proof wrap. Essentially it should be wrapped, that's it. So here you have examples of fish which are stored on crushed ice. In refrigerated box at 30 to 34 degree Fahrenheit, which is -1 to 1 degree. Now that's what we're talking about. We want the temperature to be such that the crushed ice provides -1 to +1 degree centigrade. Storing frozen fish. Now frozen fish and fresh fish are treated differently. Frozen fish, it has to be stored at temperature well below -1 degrees. It has to be stored at -18 degrees or colder. So remember, about -18 degrees or colder. Keep it well wrapped to prevent freezer burns. What are freezer burns? Freezer burns are if you keep a product exposed in a deep freezer which has got -18 or below temperature, the temperature is such, the activity of the freezer is such that it withdraws moisture from the top surface that it comes in contact with. That is one. And two is, because of the cold, the cells, they freeze over so fast that the cells, they burst. So that is called a freezer burn. Now, freezer burns is something that happens to human beings also. If you were to go to Leh, Ladakh or some high mountainous place wherein you have snow, so you typically see people covering their fingers with mittens and their nose covered, because this, when it comes in contact with the cold air, is there is a chance that the cells on the tip of the nose, the tip of your fingers, they get frozen, and then because water is because ice is has got less density than water, it expands. So when the water in the cell expands, it bursts the cell. This causes the freezer burn. So freezer burn is because of this reason. Maximum storage fish time for fish is between 2 to 6 months, depends upon it is fat fish or lean fish. Examples of fat fish include mackerel or surmai or tuna. These are all fat fish. Rotate stock, first in first out. Okay, here we have the fishes wrapped in plastic wrap over here. So when it is in this kind of a wrap, what happens is the odors don't get transferred and the fish is saved from freezer burns. Okay, here is an example of freezer burn that has happened. You see this particular white portion or this particular white portion. These are freezer burns that have happened. Thawing and handling. Frozen raw fish. So you thaw it in the refrigerator. That's very important. Now you wish to use frozen fish. Now typically you require to plan it in advance. So because you have to thaw it in the refrigerator if you want the best results. If you don't do it, there are problems that will happen, which will include moisture loss, volume loss, flavor loss, and so on. So the time required to freeze is 18 to 36 hours. See, you have a party tomorrow. It means yesterday night or this morning you should have decided upon thawing the fish, the frozen fish, if you want a party for tomorrow. If you want the fish for a party tomorrow, the frozen fish. Alternative method, if pressed for time, keep it in original moisture-proof wrapper and thaw under cold running water, which means you can keep it in the sink in cold running water in the wrapper, in the moisture-proof wrapper, and then we are talking about cold running water, not your regular tap water or not your hot running water. So small pieces, they can be cooked from the frozen steak to make handling easier and to prevent excessive drip loss. So what happens is if the fish piece is not too thick, if it is thin, in that case you can directly cook from the frozen state itself, so that there is not much of moisture loss or drip loss. You see, that drip loss is what happens during this thawing. Large fish should be thawed for more even cooking from surface to interior. So yes, obviously if it is thicker pieces, it has to be given more time for thawing. Fillets or the portions are to be breaded or prepared in some other way before cooking, maybe partially thawed. So part thawing is also okay, depending on the thickness of the product and how whether it promotes for easier handling or not. What happens is if a fillet is fully thawed, a frozen fillet, if it is fully thawed, it becomes a little more difficult to handle as compared to a fresh fillet or as compared to a frozen fillet. So you only thaw it partially so that handling it is easier. Handle thawed fish as you would handle fresh fish, and do not refreeze. What happens is when there is when you have this difference in temperature that happens, which is first you have frozen, then you have thawed it, and then again if you refreeze it, you would have what is called a temperature, because of temperature difference that's happening so frequently, you could have a population explosion of bacteria. So you do not want that kind of a happen. These are the references that we have gone through. That's about it. Thank you.